You're not lost. You're just performing. You've done the work. Read the books. Ask the questions. Healed the pain. But still, you don't feel clear. Still drifting. Still waiting for that moment when you finally know who you are. Here's the truth. You don't feel lost because you're broken. You feel lost because every version of you is still a reaction. You've become what worked, what got approval, what kept peace, what made people stay. But none of it was built in silence. All of it was built in mirrors. You're not confused. You're just buried under roles you performed too well, until even you forgot they were never yours. That were never yours. You say, I'm the strong one. I'm the calm one. I'm the one who always gives. But who are you when no one is watching? When no one needs anything from you? When no one is mirroring back a role? That's where identity begins. Not in reflection, in removal. Let's break it open. Your identity isn't chosen. It's a reaction. You think you chose who you are, but look deeper, and you'll see. Most of your identity wasn't designed. It was installed. You say, I'm a giver. But maybe that started because giving made you feel safe. You say, I'm strong. But maybe that came because showing weakness once cost you too much. You say, I'm calm. But maybe calm was just the only way to avoid more chaos. Who you are isn't who you decided to be. It's who you became to survive the environment. The traits you take pride in may be nothing more than adaptations. You learned to overfunction because no one else held structure. So you became the structure. You became reliable because no one else was. You became agreeable because disagreement meant disconnection. That's not identity. That's reaction. You didn't build from silence. You built from pressure, from the need to stay liked, safe, included, approved. And when you build from feedback, you don't build a self. You build a mask. The tragedy? You started believing the mask was real. So you optimized it, polished it, performed it, reinforced it. And now, when that mask begins to crack, you call it an identity crisis. But it's not a crisis. It's a return. You're not lost. You're just tired of keeping up a version of yourself that was built for everyone but you. Cold mind doesn't ask, who am I? It asks, who do I become when I stop reacting? That's when identity begins. Not with more answers, with less noise. Let's make that visible. Next. Signs your identity is just a social reflex. You say you know who you are, but if that you shifts depending on who you're with, you don't know. You're just adapting. Here's how you know your identity isn't self-chosen. It's socially reflexive. 1. You change tone, energy, or personality based on the room. You speak differently around different people. Not intentionally, automatically. Because you're scanning for acceptance and adjusting before anyone asks you to. That's not presence. That's reflex. 2. You don't feel fully real unless someone's reacting to you. You're not grounded in silence. You need reflection. Need someone to validate your pace, ideas, existence. That's not identity. That's mirror addiction. 3. You collapse when unacknowledged. The moment someone doesn't respond, doesn't praise, doesn't notice, you question yourself, not because you're weak, but because you've been calibrated through feedback, not foundation. 4. You don't know what you want unless someone else is involved. Your clarity only shows up in contrast to someone else's need. When left alone, you feel blank. That's not confusion. That's identity outsourcing. 5. You say, this is just how I am. but it always comes after a history of being punished for something else. I'm independent because depending once got you hurt. I don't talk much because being loud once made someone leave. I'm always helpful because that's how you kept love. These aren't traits. They're shields. This isn't self. It's social response. A role optimized for survival, not built from stillness. Let's pull the plug on the feedback loop next. True identity begins. Where social mirroring ends, you can't see yourself clearly if you only exist in reflection. If every version of you emerges as a response to someone else's tone, mood, expectation, then what you've built isn't identity. It's adaptation. And adaptation is useful for survival, but toxic for self-clarity. Because the longer you play the role, the more natural it feels, and the more unnatural it feels to stop performing. This is why silence scares you, because silence removes the mirror, and once the reflection is gone, so is the role. And in that blank space, you're left with the question most people avoid their entire life. If I'm not who they see, then who am I? That's not an identity crisis. That's identity beginning. True self doesn't arise in response to attention. It arises when you don't need to be perceived to remain stable. It's in the moment you don't reach for validation, don't explain your presence, don't filter your essence. It's in the space where no one is watching, and you're still choosing with clarity. You don't become yourself by searching for traits to define. You become yourself by subtracting every layer that was built to be liked. Cold mind doesn't find self in discovery. It finds it in the collapse of every identity built from response. That's why solitude isn't isolation. It's signal cleansing. You're not withdrawing. You're decomposing the code you didn't choose. And when the last mirror falls, whatever remains isn't performance, it's presence. And from there, you can build something that doesn't shift when no one's looking. Let's turn that into process. Next. Self-clarity protocol. 3 tactical steps to rebuild from signal. You don't find yourself in reflection. You find yourself in removal. When the roles collapse, the mirrors break, and the feedback loop ends. What's left? Signal. Not story, not memory. Just raw internal current. And now, you rebuild from that. Here's how cold mind does it. 1. Pull the social plug. You can't see yourself if you're still performing. Cut the signal loop. Step out of the chat, out of the story, out of the space where you're being read, judged, decoded. Not forever, just long enough for your system to stop optimizing. Silence isn't absence, it's filtration. You're not escaping. You're disconnecting from distortion to reset input. 2. Observe the identity collapse. Once the mirrors go dark, the structure collapses. You'll feel fog, blank, like something's wrong. That's not crisis. That's withdrawal from being perceived, from being understood, from adjusting. Don't fix it. Don't name it. Just watch it fall. This is the phase where performance dies and essence starts to speak. 3. Build from what remains in silence. Now listen. What habits still feel aligned when no one's watching? What values still hold when there's no one to impress? What behaviors don't require audience to remain consistent? That's your foundation. Not what feels good, but what feels undeniably yours, even in isolation. Identity isn't defined by traits. It's defined by what survives when all external references vanish. This is the protocol. Pull the plug, watch the collapse, build from silence. No story, no narrative, just structure born from signal, not from approval. Let's close it clean. Final message. You were never lost. You were just too reflected. You were never disconnected. You were just mirrored too often to hear your own signal. You kept adjusting, refining, optimizing. Not because you were fake, but because you were reading every room before checking your own alignment. You didn't lose yourself. You outsourced your sense of self to external feedback. And now you're done. You've unplugged. You've watched the role collapse. You've felt the fog. And now you're listening. Not to what gets praised, not to what gets understood, but to what stays when no one else is looking. That's not identity crisis. That's clarity, finally surfacing after the noise is gone. Cold mind doesn't build a better version of you. It removes every version that was a reaction, until the only thing left is undeniably yours. Quiet, clean, unshakable. In the next video, we'll explore clean construction, how to design identity from cold principles, not reactive personality. Subscribe, exit the mirror, enter silence, build from signal. That's it.